So I have like a lot of respect for Vosh because he kind of pulled me out of my like right-wing echo chamber.
Mhm.
And then I feel like what you did really good at was also challenging the left at the same time that I was coming out of the right.
Mhm.
And so I feel like, I don't know, I feel like where I could have ended up would have been another echo chamber just on like the lefty side of things. But after I mean, that sounds kind of bad. I don't think I would have gone to that same extent at all of being in an echo chamber the way I was when I was on the right. So what's the response? Because I don't believe this, but what is the response when people say that democracy is just mob rule? I know that that's incorrect. I just don't know what the response would be to that. Yeah, well, thanks for talking to me again. So yeah, I was hoping we could talk just a little bit about just like general debate advice, and then I had some questions about capitalism too.
Yeah, sure thing. Wherever you want to start.
Yeah. Um. So I guess we'll just jump right into it. Debate is something that like I'm not really too great at, but it's something that I really want to get good at.
Hmm.
And it's weird for me because usually I don't want to get better at something, even though I have like after if I fail at something enough times, then sometimes I just take that as a sign that like, okay, maybe this just isn't for me. So like I've had some pretty embarrassing public like blunders with debate before.
Hmm.
But despite all that, I still find myself like wanting to do it again and like give it another shot, and I just really want to try to get better. And lately the past few weeks, I feel like I've been improving a little bit more just because I've been doing a lot more of them.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I guess my first question would just be like, how did you get to where you are today as to being like so good at debate and so comfortable having conversations about like virtually any topic, it seems.
I mean, it's mainly just like practice, practice, practice. There's like a lot of when you're having like these types of conversations, it's the navigating these conversations is a skill that you have to work on.
Hmm.
So you'll do some, watch videos of yourself doing it, figure out if you're making mistakes, try to fix those mistakes for the next conversation, and then do it again. And you just got to keep doing that. You'll fuck up a lot, but eventually you'll get better at it. And it's kind of the improvement process for every skill, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you ever do debates and you don't feel like you did that good in the debates, and then you listen to it again and you actually think you did do okay?
Mm, no, I think I usually judge myself a little bit more harshly than otherwise. So it's more likely that I would feel like I didn't do good.
Okay.
Um,
Then that
no,
you
wait, that would be supporting what you just said. Where, okay, sorry, hold on, let me figure that in again. I did a lot of drugs last night. Sorry. Okay, my
no,
my
it's
brain
okay.
is still recovering. Okay. You asked me if do I ever feel like I didn't do good, but then I rewatch it and I feel like I did do good.
Yeah. Does that ever happen to you?
Um, I don't I don't necessarily think so. I'm trying to think if that's like ever happened before. I
Okay.
think that like um there are times where people think that I did okay, but if I'm not happy with the performance as it's happening, then usually if I go back and watch it again, I still probably won't be happy with the performance as it's happening. Yeah, because I know I can do better.
Okay.
Hmm.
Cool. Cool. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people make during debates? Just generally like on the online sphere, like what are, I don't know. Do you have any a few that you've seen that you would like advise against?
Mm, it's so hard because every type of person is so different the way that you handle them. There's different archetypes that you kind of need to learn for
Mhm.
conversations because how you approach those debates is going to be like way different. Like sometimes people want to approach debates like boxing, like they want to get really good at boxing, and then
Mhm.
you'll like go to debate a person and he's like an MMA dude, and you're like just totally not ready.
Mhm.
So like let's say that you want to debate. I don't know how many names you know in this space. Let's say you want to. Do you know who Dylan Burns is?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So let's say that you want to debate Dylan Burns on something. As
Okay.
long as you roughly understand the facts and you know what you're going to say, then you'd like have a conversation and then you would have like a quote unquote debate with him where you try to lay out your argument as logically as possible and then poke holes in his, right?
Right.
Like a very standard debate. But let's say you're debating somebody like Rob Noor. Do you know that guy?
Isn't he the conservative guy that I think he's been on a lot of
Hmm.
panels with you before too, right?
Yeah, he is a conservative. Yeah. So he's like a very good debater in that what he'll do is he will spin really big stories whenever he opens his mouth. So you might say something like, I don't like I think that there are systemic injustices in the criminal justice system. And his response to that will be like, oh, well, actually, if we go back and we look at what Obama did under the criminal justice system, we can see that the majority of these cases are fake and blah, 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 blah. And he'll go on and on and on and on and on. And he
Hmm.
might say like 5 or 6 things you disagree with. But by the time he's done talking, he's like spun a really convincing story.
Hmm.
And there are other ways that you would like fight against somebody like that versus somebody like Dylan Burns, right? It's going to be a totally different type of entanglement in terms of trying to quote unquote win that debate.
Hmm.
So it's really hard to give like a like, oh, what are 4 things to look out for? You know, like because I can give you some things, but it's going to be like totally different depending on who you're having a conversation with.
I guess that's true because some conversations, I guess, are going to be relying more on like the technical and just like the factual side of things. I guess that's how it would be if you were having a debate with Dylan Burns. How would
Mhm.
you go about then debating someone like Rob Noor, someone who does like construct these like massive, convincing stories really quickly? Like, how would you go about debating a person like that?
Um, you have to first you need to be aware of what's happening.
Okay.
That's like really, really, really important. And then you probably need to be very well read on what it is exactly you're going to be talking about, because those types of people that spin stories, the conclusions will be true following their facts, but you're usually going to have to fight on the underlying facts, meaning there is no shortcut there. You're just going to have to be like pretty well read on what it is specifically that they're talking about.
Okay.
If
Cool.
you know all the points, you're pretty well read on them, then those types of debates can become very easy because technically, it's strange. So, have you ever heard of the term gish gallop?
Yeah.
So if somebody gish gallops, what they're trying to do is they're trying to construct a strong conclusion based off like 6 or 7 faulty or not that great premises, but as long as they rapid fire them out, like the conclusion feels good, even if everything underlying isn't necessarily true. Technically, you really only have to tear down 1 or 2 arguments to destroy the credibility in the eyes of a viewer. So if somebody gish gallops like 6 or 7 points at you, if you're familiar with like 2 or 3 of these underlying points, you know they're wrong, you can point that out and you'll
Right.
like look good even if the other argue you don't have to know anything about the others. But yeah, for people that engage in that kind of stuff, it's pretty important that like you just have to know the underlying stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So it really does come down to just being well researched and well prepared for whatever topic you're going to be discussing, I guess.
Depending, yeah.
Yeah. I guess the last question I would have just in relation to debate would be, I mean, you seem really good at reaching people that disagree with you. And I guess maybe this is kind of like the biggest mistake question again. I was going to ask, what are a couple effective like ways that you found to be really effective with reaching people that just completely disagree with you? Because my initial thought would be trying to find middle ground with that person, but you seem to have a way of like really convincing people of your side.
Again, that's going to super depend on who you talk to. I
Yeah,
think
maybe
the
these are too
general
broad. These might be kind of
yeah, I
broad
think that the
questions.
no, it's okay. I think that the general advice is usually like what I say is you have to meet people where they are. So the best way to convince somebody is you have to be willing to acknowledge these like underlying descriptive realities. And as long as you'll meet somebody there, usually you can bring them over to your side. That's kind of the goal. So that's like one prong of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then and then the second prong of it is you have to make one thing that I found is really effective is to make sure that people understand that the other side isn't really offering any good solutions. This has worked against alt-righters and commies or tankies. Like when people start complaining about something, or like when you're talking to a white nationalist, it's like, okay, well, fine. Let's say that I buy into every single thing you've said. Let's say black culture, Mexican culture, all of it's bad. What do you want to do? And then usually they falter there because it's like, well, are you really going to ship off every non-white person? How are you going to decide who's white enough? Are we really going to do
Right.
like the one drop rule? Like, yeah, how are you going to do that? And then if they start to falter, then they don't have any real solutions. That starts to look really bad in the eyes of their followers.
Right, because
Um,
it looks like
yeah,
all they're just interested in kind of attacking and not actually having any solution. That
yeah,
makes
basically. Yeah.
sense. Yeah. I had some arguments with some white nationalists the other day, and I did use some of the arguments I heard both from your videos and from Vosh's videos. And overall it did go pretty well because it ended up taking that direction actually by just asking them like what would they do. And yeah,
Hmm.
even in the eyes of an audience, it looks so bad to see the person pretty much just admitting that like yeah, we'd want to like just separate black and white people in the country. Like
Hmm.
you're not going to win that argument in the eyes
Yeah,
of an
exactly. It
audience.
looks ridiculous. Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
I guess yeah, I mean I guess we can move on to the questions about capitalism. I definitely have some people who follow me, I think from Vosh's audience and just people in general who are a little bit further left than I am. But I've watched a lot of your content with you arguing with lefties, and that's another reason why I really have been enjoying your content so much is because So I have like a lot of respect for Vosh because he kind of pulled me out of my like right wing echo chamber.
Hmm.
And then I feel like what you did really good at was also challenging the left at the same time that I was coming out of the right.
Hmm.
And so I feel like, I don't know, I feel like where I could have ended up would have been another echo chamber just on like the lefty side of things. But after I kind of, I mean, that sounds kind of bad. I don't think I would have gone to that same extent at all of being in an echo chamber the way I was when I was on the right. But there
Hmm.
were just some things, especially when you follow people on Twitter and you kind of see it in your daily news or whatever, like before you know it, there's certain ideas that kind of become that you just sort of start to like accept almost as just like normal or true or whatever. And then to see you kind of pushing against that, to hear you really giving solid arguments for like more like social democrat positions, I don't know. I found it to be really refreshing. And I also always identified more with social democrat kind of policies working within like reality. um, and after watching your content, I just feel like, I don't know, your arguments were really solid. You gave me some more confidence in being, I guess, being a proud neolib, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah.
But yeah,
Um, I think online, one of the things that I try to focus on, it's hard because I think even I can lose it sometimes. Is I very much wish that people would absorb thought processes from me. I don't really care as much about the conclusions. I think the reason people go from like one radicalized like area of the internet to another is because they're not really like working on the thought process. It's more kind of like you're picking a community and a team online,
mhm,
and then when you join that team or community, you kind of inherit all of their political beliefs.
right,
And there's not really much thought given to the underlying political beliefs. Although,
yeah,
to be fair, there's not really much reason to. I have like a financial gain that I can make out of like staking out certain positions and like I make money on my YouTube and blah, 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 blah. But if I was like a normal person in like an online community, if I tend to disagree with some of the more extreme views by said community, I don't gain anything for doing that, right? All you
right,
would do is get ostracized. So, and a lot of these online communities are very, very, very pure in terms of
oh yeah.
the ideology that they accept. So if you like divert even a little bit, you can get super, super, super fucked. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because the left is known for being very like purity checking all the time. And it
Hmm.
shows because you're right, people will be ostracized. But I think that like the right gives this veneer of acceptance, especially for people who like obviously if you're an apolitical person and you see one side of the political spectrum that seems much more open and accepting and one that's going to purity check you for something you said like that was offensive 8 years ago, like it kind of speaks for itself what seems to be inevitable there. But
Hmm.
I just feel like the right also has an issue with cancel culture just massively. And I experienced that first time. I don't want to just try keep bringing the conversation back to myself, but I know when I called out the conservative censorship narrative a while back, and this was before I even had like left the right formally and whatever. And just it was instant that I had right wingers that had previously like publicly supported me when my channel got banned, all of a sudden tweeting that like I'm an example why young people shouldn't be allowed to speak. Or like it was insane how quick conservatives flipped on me the minute that I broke away from some of their ideology. So I feel like that happens on the right and the left. It's very much about conformity. So,
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on. Um, it definitely depends on yeah, different. Right now, different people have hold power in different areas of society. So that's going to be where you see the quote unquote cancel culture the most is where you intersect in society, right?
Right.
So like online, in terms of like large corporations, undeniably the left has most of the power right now. They have all the corporate backing in terms of like getting people canceled. No, like people getting canceled online is mainly going to be because of like left leaning people pushing for it. Although I think if right leaning people had the power, I think they'd probably push for it too, right? If you look at like Trump trying to cancel the kneeling guy for the anthem stuff,
Oh, Kaepernick.
Kaepernick, yeah. Um, or if you look at like people attacking people that don't support Israel or whatever,
Oh yeah, I mean
you can yeah.
we
Mhm.
literally just saw that happen with the Olympics thing where the girl turned away
Mhm.
from the flag. I was actually thinking about talking about that a little while because conservatives, yeah, like I think Dan Crenshaw wrote a whole ass book on like something to do with cancel culture, and then he was saying that she should be like kicked out of the Olympics because she didn't
Mhm.
like stand for the national anthem. It's really
Yeah.
It's so hypocritical, in my opinion.
Hmm.
But yeah, when it comes to capitalism, an argument that I've heard a lot against it, and I would be really curious to know your response, is capitalism intrinsically exploitative? And people usually bring up the like underclass sweatshops and like a level of coercion.
I think that people have very naive readings into what coercion means. And I think that people will stretch the definitions far enough to suit whatever argument they want to use. Um, like, it's funny because, see, this is kind of where I talk about like ideological like teams where you just kind of inherit the positions without thinking about them much.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the arguments that left-leaning people will make saying that like anything you do in a capitalist system is coercive are actually identical to the arguments that libertarians make, saying that taxes are thievery, like all taxes are theft.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if we look at like the most steelman version of like a leftist arguing that they would probably say like labor is exploitative in a capitalist system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like you can say that, but then like my response would be like, well, you choose where to work, right? Like it's like that's not like forced upon you. Like you have a choice. And then the response back to that is going to be, okay, well, is it really a choice? If you choose not to, you're going to starve to death or you're going to die. That sounds like coercion to me. Now, if we want to use that definition of coercion, first of all, I don't know how I feel about that one, but let's say that we do roll with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If that's the case, then literally every single like economic organization is going to be coercive. I'm sorry, but you're never going to have a socialist system where people don't have to work. And when they don't have to do jobs that they don't want to do, that will exist in every single economic system. So if you're going to say that capitalism is coercive because people have to work to not die, communism or socialism will be the exact same. There are going to be people that have to work or they will die. So I mean, like, yeah, I just find that argument really unconvincing.
And then how does that play? That's a really great argument, by the way, a really great response. But how does that relate to the idea of like an underclass and there being like sweatshops overseas? Does capitalism require there to be like this underclass of individual? You can probably tell I don't understand the the pros and cons of this argument very well. But
I think that gets like really complicated. I don't think that capitalism requires like an underclass of slaves. Like obviously we will tap into the cheapest labor markets possible.
mhm,
Although capitalist countries like to make those labor markets stronger because it helps their workers and there's a lot of political pressure to do so. So for example, with the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, there were a lot of labor rules written into that for countries that were going to join because if you're a native country, you don't want all of your workers getting outcompeted by other countries. So yeah, I don't think capitalism requires that slave labor or whatever to work. Like things will just cost a little bit more, but in general, I think countries like to trade with other countries that have like freer, more stable systems rather than people that are just being like oppressively slave like labored.
okay, great. Okay, that's a really solid answer. Thank you. Um, I guess the next question would be how do you think that capitalism is going to adopt I'm sorry, adapt for automation?
Who knows? This is a in Marx's time, I believe that he thought that with the advent of like the sewing looms and everything, he was pretty certain that I think in his lifetime capitalism would be done because like there would just be so much automation and everything, or there would be so many machines that there would be like an abundance of people and not enough work to do. That seems to be like an assumption that we run into over and over and over again that, oh my God, this new machine has replaced like a million workers. Like this one robot can do like an Excel spreadsheet can do like what a whole like in like a whole room full of people with filing cabinets used to be able to do, right? There's no way that there's going to be work. But it seems to be the case that we keep finding more work for people to do and we haven't run out yet. I think the next big hurdle we'll jump through is going to be the automation of driving because truckers are like such a big part of the economy, but who knows? Maybe we'll keep finding more jobs. It's hard to say.
Okay. Okay, I guess that would kind of play to the next question, which would be,
Wait, hold on. I just want to wait. Can I address something real quickly?
yeah, sure.
So somebody says, Destiny, the difference is because it removes having to submit to the will of a capitalist. Under socialism, the idea is that what you do in the workplace is negotiated rather than just commanded. No. In any society, there is going to be some amount of work that people aren't going to want to do that they will have to do. That is going to exist in every single society. There's going to be some buy-in where you must work. And not every job is going to be painting in the commune or fingernail polishing people in the commune. There's going to be shitty work like farming, like being a janitor, like working in sewers, and that stuff is going to have to be carried out by people that don't want to do it. That buy-in exists. That's just necessary in any society. until we've reached like some post scarcity, fully automated like utopia or whatever. But yeah, okay, sorry.
When AI can do everything for us. But
Mhm.
yeah, that kind of plays into my next question, which would be, what's your perspective on a UBI? And I've also heard people they've talked about possibly using a UBI instead of raising minimum wage because that doesn't risk small businesses as much as raising minimum wage might. I don't know your opinion on raising minimum wage either.
This gets like really it's really hard to say this. First of all, I hate that there aren't enough like experiments with UBI because I'd be really interested to see how it plays out on larger scales.
Hmm.
Um, so it's just yeah, it's hard. I can't make any definitive statements on if UBI is good or bad just because it's hard to carry these experiments out on large scales. I wish they would happen more. I know
Okay.
they've tried to do it. I know that Yang talked about wanting to do it with some people. They were placed in Canada where they were going to do it. So it'd be cool to see that. I am a huge fan, and for really dumb reasons, lefties get like really ass mad at like means testing. I really like targeting people that need help, and I'm worried sometimes that UBI would neglect some people that otherwise need like targeted help. Um, so yeah, like when we talk about like student loan forgiveness or whatever, the fact that all schools should be free, like I don't know if that's the case. I really like have you ever heard of the economic concept of price discrimination?
Um, could you explain that to me?
Yeah. So price discrimination is you've probably heard that like the rising cost of college is getting more and more and more expensive. It's
Right.
not really true. The sticker price of college is getting more expensive, but the average cost paid by students is about the same as it always has been. It's gone up a little, it's gone down a little. It might be a little bit up right now. But the reason is because of something called price discrimination. So price discrimination is you go into a shop and they're selling here is a textbook, it is $1,000. However, if you're poor, it's $500. If you are poor and you are handicapped, it's $200. If you live in this area, it's $400. Right? There's like ways to make it so that the price is brought down lower for people that need the extra help, but for people who can afford the full price, you pay the full price. Yeah.
Hmm. And you're saying lefties aren't a big fan of that at all?
No, because they want everything to be universalized for arguments that, in my opinion, are wholly unconvincing. So it feels like an ideological position to me more than anything. But lefties will say that when you universalize programs, it makes them harder to attack and there's not as much stigma around them. Personally, I don't buy into that at all. I think it's silly. But that would be their
Hmm.
response to that.
Okay. Okay, very cool. Um, Recently I was talking a little bit about like rainbow capitalism, and I was more or less defending that. I was kind of saying, although it's hollow, it seems to have like a net positive, or not a net, sorry, I was corrected by someone in chat the other day. But it seems
Hmm.
to have an overall positive effect. Um, what do you, but that's right. A lot of the times people will bring up, though, as a response to that, these companies that have like donated to politicians via their corporate PAC. So I did some research into a corporate PAC and kind of found out how they work. But that kind of leads to a broader question, which is how, like, what do you think the current issues are with campaign finance? And is it even a bad thing that corporations are able to push for their business interests? Like, I guess where's the line there?
Um,
That might have been a poorly
this is
phrased.
like my least popular take, even in my community. I'm probably gonna like. I need to like weave together like 4 or 5 different articles that I've read on this. Is very interesting. I think that campaign finance is just way less important than people think it is. I think people are really uncomfortable with the idea that we live in a democracy and people vote the way that they do. I think that people want to look for boogeymen everywhere, and they want to try to find like what's fucking everything up, like what's destroying everything. And corporate finance or campaign finance is like the easiest kind of like boogeyman to point at. But I think the reality is that I think the reality is that it probably doesn't affect our politics that much.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and I've seen a lot of like interesting stuff that kind of points in that direction, but that's like a whole other type of conversation.
Right.
I'd encourage people to read more into that. But yeah.
I've heard you talk before about how you haven't really seen an example of any major corporation that was in favor of some kind of legislation that was unpopular
Mhm.
with the American people that still ended up passing. There usually is not.
Yeah, this is my kind of like shit test for this because there's a lot of things that I believe in, probably still today, that I haven't thought too much about. I try to think about everything that I talk about at least. But the corporate finance, campaign finance from corporations is actually my largest issue in 2016. It's something that was really, really, really important to me. Like I was the reason why I supported Bernie, even though he's more left on most issues than I'd like to be. I was like, we just need to get corporate money into politics 100%. And then I think I had a conversation with somebody, and I don't know if they posed this question to me or if I just thought of this question afterwards, but it's like, well, what's like one major policy that like all of America is united on, but corporations keep fucking us over on? And I honestly can't think of a single thing. I couldn't think of anything. And it's tempting sometimes to say certain things, but when you know, like people across the political aisle on the other side, you're like, well, no, there's probably reasons why this isn't supported by all of America. And it's not just because of like shady campaign finance corporations like dealing in the background or whatever. It's just because there are legitimately huge ideological divides in this country for how we should approach doing things.
Right, right. I guess this is a little bit disconnected from the capitalism discussion, but what's your
Oh, wait, real quick. So this is a really, really, really good example.
Okay.
There's a video that was just released where oil companies admitted that they've done everything they possibly can to stop clean energy by lobbying. What are you talking about, Destiny? So that's a really good example in my favor. So people got mad because the Exxon shit came out recently where they were trying to do what they can to like keep oil shit or whatever. I'm pretty sure there have been 3 massive pipelines with huge companies behind them that have been totally canceled now in the United States. The Keystone XL pipeline, I think, is dead. There was one in the Eastern Atlantic pipeline that I believe is completely dead. And then there was a third one as well. I don't think it was in Canada. It might have been in Michigan. I don't remember. That's also completely dead. Like pipelines and everything are getting crushed around the U.S. because of like overwhelming public backlash against them. And the oil companies, the energy companies are really well funded. They've got a lot of money to lobby, and their lobbying did fuck all to help these things in court, out of court, and the ring of public opinion. Yeah.
So it does seem that they are still at the will of the market.
In terms of what voters want, yeah, I think voters are the most important thing. It's just not a lot of people vote, and then a lot of people don't like the people voting against them. So we look for like boogeymen to blame.
That's an interesting perspective. That's really cool. This is, like I said, a little bit disconnected from capitalism, but I wanted to ask you about democracy. An argument that I hear a lot. Well, I guess I should first decide to you. What is your opinion on democracy?
I mean, it seems cool. I'm disappointed by a lot of our outcomes sometimes, but I mean, the alternatives are like finding some dictator that you trust to do everything correctly. But that's just like so prone to so much abuse, and I don't know if this has ever been done well in history. Like, it seems pretty impossible to do that.
So what's the response? Because I don't believe this, but what is the response when people say that democracy is just mob rule? I know that that's incorrect. I just don't know what the response would be to that.
Well, I mean, it's specifically not. In the United States, we have a constitution that protects certain rights that like are literally, even if the majority want to get rid of it, you'd have to pass like a constitutional amendment otherwise, because of some like protected statuses. You can't just vote away like certain types of rights unless you can literally get so many people on board with it that you start to amend the constitution.
Maybe it was majority rule, not mob rule.
Sure. I mean, to some extent, democracy is kind of majority or mob rule. It just depends on how like your government is broken up. But there are parts of the U.S. government that are supposed to prevent that from happening, right? So like we have the Senate, for instance, to change how it's not just the most people. You also have state representation as well. We've got like the Supreme Court that's supposed to serve as a balance to Congress passing laws that might be unconstitutional. You've got, right, there's different, yeah.
That's true. That's a great response, yeah. My last question would just be, I guess, going back to debate. Is there any debate that you've done that you feel that you've like just completely lost? Like, is there any debate you've done that you just look back at, you're like, I objectively did badly on that one?
Yeah, there are plenty. There are different ones for different reasons. Sometimes like, I think my past debates with Vosh, if you want to see like a big change in style that I've had, in terms of like not giving at all a fuck about rhetoric versus being more focused on it. If you look at like my Rittenhouse debate against Vosh, that's a debate that I feel like I won. I feel like my points were logical and consistent. But rhetorically, I looked bad because I was willing to bite bullets and because of some of the statements he made. But if you look at like more recent conversations I've had with him, I think that I am logically and rhetorically superior in those conversations. So like I would compare something like that. There have been people in the past that just knew more than me about a lot of like either conspiracy theories or about a given topic. So I just wasn't able to adequately counter them. So
Okay.
I had a conversation with Ryan Dawson in the past, and he just knew way more about Middle East shit than me. I had a conversation very recently with Larry Sharp, who knew like a ton of like things about history that I just didn't know. And it makes it really hard to like mount a coherent argument against anything. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, like there are definitely times where I get into a conversation and I don't have all the information I need for that conversation. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. I mean, I know this was kind of a short conversation, but I really appreciate you answering some of these questions. It was really cool getting to talk to you a little bit.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime, buddy.
Yeah. Well, have a good rest of your day.
Okay. I love you. Be careful. Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.
Do you want to be a VTuber?
Let me think about that actually.